Don't get in the helicopter. The voice cut through the air, sharp and urgent. A little black boy was shouting, his small frame dwarfed by the vastness of the open airfield. His warning, desperate and clear, was nearly lost in the roar of the spinning rotors above. The churning blades sliced through the midday wind, their rhythmic thump echoing like a far-off storm across the flat stretch of concrete. The helicopter stood gleaming under the pale sun, black and yellow, polished to perfection, poised on the tarmac near the private terminal of Havenwood Executive Strip. Everything about the scene was too still, too quiet, except for the dull, mechanical thudding overhead. Marcus Thorne, 42, stepped confidently toward the aircraft. A real estate mogul and investor, he was the picture of composure in his tailored navy suit. It hugged his broad shoulders with the precision of armor. He adjusted his cufflinks like it was second nature, completely unfazed by the chaos brewing in the background. But this wasn't just another business trip. For the past week, something had felt off. He'd been receiving strange, anonymous threats. It had started with a blank envelope, left on his penthouse desk. Then a dead bird had appeared on the windshield of his Bugatti. Just last night, someone had tried to tamper with the security cameras at his Harbor Point vacation home. Subtle, unnerving warnings. Still, Marcus hadn't breathed a word to anyone, not even his assistant. Whoever was trying to intimidate him had clearly underestimated the kind of man he was. So he'd made a snap decision early that morning. A private helicopter, booked last minute. He'd head 2 hours north to a secluded, off-grid retreat where no one could track him. No connections. No threats. No eyes watching. It was the perfect escape, or so he thought. As Marcus lifted his polished loafer to step onto the helicopter's skid, the boy's voice rang out again, louder this time. Don't get in the helicopter. He froze, startled. His eyes darted to the source. A boy, no older than 7 or 8, was sprinting across the tarmac straight toward him. His clothes were filthy, streaked with dried mud. His shirt hung off one shoulder. His pants were torn. His face, drenched in sweat and streaked with tears, twisted with sheer panic. His arms flailed as he ran. Don't go. They'll kill you. You can't go up there. Marcus backed away from the helicopter door, alarm rising in his chest. Where the hell was his security team? They were supposed to be nearby, patrolling by his jet, just behind the hangar. He instinctively reached out a hand, trying to steady the boy. Hey, slow down, Marcus said, concern knitting his brow. What are you talking about? The boy stumbled the last few feet and collapsed to his knees right at Marcus's feet, gasping for breath. The man inside, he wheezed. He's not who you think he is. Marcus tensed, a chill running through him. Slowly, cautiously, he turned toward the cockpit. The pilot sat there calmly, headset on, looking straight ahead. Watching. Waiting. A little too calm, Marcus thought. The kind of calm that didn't sit right in his gut. Something in him shifted. The boy's fear, it wasn't staged. It wasn't for show. It was raw, pure, and terrifyingly real. Marcus knelt beside him. Who are you? He asked quietly. My name's Kofi, the boy whispered between ragged breaths. They took my brother. He tried to warn someone too. Marcus's blood ran cold. Kofi clutched Marcus's sleeve. That man, he continued, pointing shakily toward the pilot. He doesn't work for the helicopter company. I heard him on the radio, talking to others. They're waiting. They were waiting for you to leave. Marcus looked again at the pilot, this time with a sharpened eye. The man didn't move, just sat still, hands on the controls, too composed for someone who'd just seen a kid rush out of nowhere. He wasn't reacting. He already knew. Marcus rose slowly, his instincts screaming. This was no coincidence. Kofi hadn't just stumbled onto the runway. He was here for a reason. And that reason had just possibly saved Marcus's life. Everything started clicking into place. The threats. The silence from his assistant. The subtle but deliberate tampering with his properties. Someone wanted him gone, and they'd gone to great lengths to make it look like an accident. He stepped away from the helicopter, pulling out his phone, heart thudding louder than the rotor above. As he hit the emergency line, he reached down and helped Kofi to his feet. You did good, kid, Marcus said, voice low. You might have just saved us both. Marcus stood alone, heart pounding, the thunder of his pulse echoing in his ears. He turned once more to stare at the helicopter, its blades still spinning slowly like the ticking hands of a deadly clock. The charter had been arranged last minute, through a third-party broker. No paperwork, no names. Everything rushed and done off the record. At the time, it felt like a smart move, a quick, discreet escape. Now it felt like a trap. Had someone used his fear against him? Exploited the urgency he'd felt to disappear? Suddenly, the helicopter's side door creaked open. "Everything okay, Mr. Thorne?" The pilot called out, voice flat and mechanical. He stood framed in the doorway, one hand casually resting near the throttle controls. His expression was unreadable, eyes hidden behind reflective lenses. Marcus forced a tight smile and nodded. "Yeah. I just forgot something in the terminal. I'll be right back." He didn't wait for a response. He reached down and pulled Kofi up by the arm. The boy was trembling, but he moved without question. As they turned to walk back toward the admin building, Marcus could feel the pilot's eyes burning into his back. The man didn't smile. He didn't blink. He just watched, too calm, too still. Marcus moved briskly, placing a protective arm over Kofi's shoulders. The boy limped beside him, barefoot and shaking. Together, they crossed the tarmac, the wind from the helicopter's blades whipping their clothes. As soon as they were inside, Marcus slammed his hand down on the emergency lockdown switch. The doors sealed with a mechanical hiss. His hands were shaking. He had built empires, negotiated billion-dollar deals, and gone toe-to-toe with some of the sharpest minds in the business world. Yet today, a barefoot child had saved his life. He picked up the landline and punched in a secure number. "Get here now," he said when his head of security answered. "The pilot, he isn't one of ours. Lock down the entire airfield. I want confirmation on the charter broker, the company, the pilot's name, full background check. Pull every camera angle. Get the FAA on the line now." "Sir, are you okay?" came the urgent response. "What's going on?" Marcus turned to look at Kofi, who had curled up on a bench near the vending machines. His arms were wrapped tightly around his knees, his eyes vacant, exhausted. "I will be," Marcus said. "But the boy, he needs help too." Within minutes, Havenwood Airfield came alive with response teams. Security vehicles circled the grounds. Agents moved with urgency. But it was already too late. The helicopter was gone. The second Marcus had locked the terminal doors, the engine had surged louder. The aircraft lifted quickly and disappeared into the horizon, blades slicing through the air as it vanished over the dense tree line. No flight plan had been filed. No transponder signal. No radar trail. It was like it had evaporated into the sky. As investigators reviewed Kofi's story, a chilling truth began to emerge. 2 months earlier, Kofi's older brother, Abel, had disappeared. The two boys had been living near the industrial docks, scavenging, surviving however they could. One night, a man dressed like a pilot approached them. He offered food, shelter, and help. Abel had gone with him. Only Kofi had escaped. He'd been hiding ever since, watching, listening. He haunted the edges of private airstrips, lurking in the shadows, waiting for a familiar voice or face. And then earlier that day he'd heard it. The same voice that had tricked his brother. A voice on the radio, crackling through the airwaves at Havenwood. That was when he ran. He didn't know what he was going to do. He didn't expect anyone to listen. But Marcus did. And it likely saved his life. By the time federal agents arrived on the scene, Marcus had already handed over everything. Every camera feed, every second of footage, every scrap of data he had. Most importantly, he had given them the full recording of Kofi's warning. As the feds took over, Marcus sat in the terminal lounge, staring out at the tarmac where the helicopter had been. The spot was empty now, eerily still, like none of it had happened. Kofi sat quietly in the corner, wrapped in a clean towel, a styrofoam cup of warm cocoa cradled in his hands. He hadn't said much since the helicopter disappeared. Just one thing, his brother's name. "Abel," he whispered softly. "I haven't seen him since the men in uniforms came." Marcus leaned back in the chair, exhaustion washing over him like a wave. This day had changed everything. The threats, the escape, the boy, none of it had been random. Someone had orchestrated the entire thing. Someone had expected Marcus to be alone, off the grid, easy to take. And someone had been watching long before today. He looked over at Kofi again. The boy had risked everything, sprinted across a runway, screamed at a stranger, all in the hope of being believed. And somehow he'd gotten through. The helicopter had vanished without a trace, but not without consequence. Marcus was already making calls, pulling strings, setting wheels in motion. If someone was using private airfields for abductions, for something darker, it would be exposed. He wouldn't let Kofi's warning be the end. It would be the beginning. I remember their patches, Kofi whispered to Marcus later, his voice barely audible. They sat in a quiet hallway. The chaos of investigators and agents muted behind the thick walls of the administrative wing. Kofi's eyes stayed low, his fingers twisting at the edge of a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. There was a sun, a wing and a number. 9. Marcus frowned. That detail sparked a memory. He knew that emblem. It belonged to a private security contractor he had worked with nearly 3 years ago during a controversial property development project near the southern border. The group specialized in discreet extractions and off-the-books operations, clean, professional, and invisible. Marcus had only used them once and hadn't thought about them since. But now someone else had. And worse, someone had used his name to charter the helicopter. Within days, the investigation exploded in scope. Federal agencies dug deep and fast. The pilot was identified as Vince Carlo, a former military operative who had gone rogue years earlier. After being dishonorably discharged, Carlo had slipped into the underworld, where he joined a black market trafficking ring that operated under the guise of elite charter services. Their targets? High-value individuals, CEOs, landowners, scientists, people who could vanish mid-flight without raising immediate suspicion. Ransom bait for criminal syndicates around the globe. But this time their plan failed. Because someone they overlooked, a barefoot child no one noticed, had been listening, watching, waiting. And he ran. 2 weeks later, armed agents stormed a remote warehouse near the coast. Inside, hidden in a sealed shipping container, they found 4 boys. Malnourished. Afraid. Silent. One of them was Abel. Kofi stood at the edge of the scene, holding Marcus's hand tightly, as his older brother emerged into the daylight. Abel was thin, his eyes hollowed by fear, his shoulders slumped, but he was alive. The brothers said nothing at first. No screams. No words. Just a quiet, aching moment as they stepped into each other's arms. Forehead to forehead, they stood like that for what felt like forever, anchoring each other back into the world. From a few feet away, Marcus watched, his arms folded across his chest, jaw clenched with emotion. He had seen many powerful things in his life, closing billion-dollar deals, reshaping city skylines, but nothing had ever hit him like this moment. It wasn't victory. It was grace. Later that afternoon, standing before a crowd of reporters gathered outside the headquarters of Thorn Holdings, Marcus addressed the media with a calm, clear voice. I spent years building fences to protect my life, he began. To guard my money, my reputation, my legacy. But I forgot something. Sometimes, the walls we build don't just keep danger out. They also keep truth from getting in. He paused, glancing briefly toward Kofi and Abel, standing beside a security aide nearby. I assumed I was safe because I was rich. But safety isn't about wealth. It's about awareness. And sometimes the people who see danger coming aren't the ones in suits and ties. Sometimes they're the ones we pass by every day, without noticing. Marcus's voice tightened slightly. A barefoot child saved my life. I intend to repay that. And he meant it. In the months that followed, Marcus launched the Kofi Foundation, a global initiative designed to provide housing, education, psychological support, and protection for children rescued from trafficking or exploitation. Its mission was simple: to make sure no voice like Kofi's ever went unheard again. The foundation's first 2 residents were Kofi and Abel. But Marcus didn't adopt them. Instead, he sat them down and asked, quietly and sincerely, if they would adopt him. Not as a father, but as a man who still had much to learn. A man determined never to let ignorance or comfort cost another life. He would become their student, their advocate, their protector. In a world full of closed doors, Marcus chose to open his. Weeks later, the yellow and black helicopter was discovered abandoned in a sugarcane field hundreds of miles away. It had been stripped of identifying parts, its serial numbers removed, its onboard equipment gone. A ghost with spinning blades. Vince Carlo, the rogue pilot, was eventually captured while attempting to board a cargo vessel from a private port in Brazil. His arrest led to a web of international arrests, revealing layers of hidden players behind the trafficking ring. But long after the court dates, the paperwork, and the press coverage faded, one image remained etched in the minds of everyone who heard the story. A dirt-covered boy, barefoot, terrified, determined, sprinting across a tarmac toward a man worth millions. Not to beg, not to steal, but to save him. Some say angels wear wings. But that day, the angel wore a torn shirt, no shoes, and carried nothing but truth in his voice. He knew exactly when to shout, "Don't get in the helicopter." If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales.